Welcome to C21 Drive Time. Our team of realtors will be sharing industry news and insights, the occasional interview with interesting people, and some of the most unreal real estate stories you have ever heard. And here's our hosts.
I'm Aaron Relic, and welcome to the C21 Drive Time podcast, where we talk about everything real estate, unreal estate, visit with excellent guests, and give you an informative and entertaining perspective on the real estate market.
Whoa.
That was good.
That's pretty good. That's
I'm
very,
like, you set the bar real high now.
that was very Alec Trebek-esque.
It's very Alec Trebek-like.
So anyway, if anyone's wondering, we have the brains of the operation here today.
We do?
First, I think most
Oh,
of
those
you
guys.
Yeah. Mostly, probably you, Ryan,
No.
Mr. Ryan Topley, and of course, owner, manager, realtor, Chris Hassel.
Husband, you know.
Jack of all trades.
Exactly.
Soon to be father-in-law times 2.
Oh, God. I got to go sell something because I got 2 weddings to pay for next year. So, yeah, I got to get the heck out of here.
Yeah,
So
that's realtor currency, isn't it? I know I got a kid getting ready for university now. I equate everything. How many houses does university cost? You know, that's why I equate everything. Is how many houses is going to cost
yeah,
me?
a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got 2. I'm staring down a tuition bill for 2 of them for college here in a week or so, and it's like, oh my God.
Yeah.
So if you're middle-aged, have kids either getting married or going to school, this is the podcast for you.
That's right.
So there you go. I mean, you can tell by the black bags under our eyes and the stress in our voice that this is an interesting time of life we're entering into, where the children are leaving the nest and becoming a whole hell of a lot more expensive.
Exactly.
But on the flip side, your kid, you've had a couple just leave, and you've done the downsizing thing. We're talking about the downsizing thing, and Ryan, you're a couple years away from
that conversation, I'm sure. So.
Yeah, I can't wait. I looked out my yard. We've a nice yard, big yard, and all I thought to myself was, I love this, but I can't wait to not have to deal with it.
Right.
To get down to, not that we're not in some modern, massive, extravagant home at 1,500 square feet, but to go to 1,000 square feet that. I just need a bedroom, kitchen, living room, and a laundry room.
Well, there's an old story, too. My dad used to joke and say, if you make the house small enough, the kids can't come back because there's nowhere for them to stay.
I tried to have that. I've tried to sell the whole condo living idea, and my wife's not ready for that. She definitely wants to have a place for them to come back and visit. And I'm sure, really now we have one out of the house. She just comes home to visit the pantry and steal things.
Yeah. I could see that in my future. Yeah, I got one who'd probably be exactly the same way.
Absolutely. And speaking from experience, last fall a buyer presented itself. In fact, Ryan brought a buyer and sold our home. So of course there's things you miss. I had a nice triple car garage just shy of 1,000 square feet. Just remind myself of my old garage. So the soaker tub in the ensuite. So there's some things that we definitely miss. On the flip side of it, you're right. It was like, okay, we got, maybe 3 kids to be in Calgary as of next fall if our youngest goes to U of C. So we thought, hey, we've got a secondary residence at the lake. How much space do we need? We're down to 1 kid. We love her to pieces. If she moves out tomorrow, we're just like, okay, it's Mama and I. And then we look at each other and say, now what?
Yeah.
And, the maintenance on the last house was minimal. This is minimal again. It's a half an hour mow. It's an easy. So yeah, but I know that there's that anxiety of saying, okay, what's next? What could we go down to? We help clients like this all the time. Sometimes it's to condo. Condo can be a bit extreme for some. When you're basically apartment style living.
Yeah.
The premise is fantastic because you just come and go. You could be at the golf course. You could be in Arizona. You can be wherever you want, and it's taken care of. The heat's taken care of. There's no yard maintenance. There's no anything like that. Yeah. On the flip side, it's too much too quick for some. Your wife, for instance, you're like, okay, I don't want to get there. That's a stage in our life when the kids are then they have their kids and we can go visit them. Cool. So, but there's no right or wrong. I mean, heavens, it's when I went to Calgary and toured around a bit down there, there's people that it's, obviously condo living is huge in bigger centers. So they might be, if the kids are gone, they might be touring. They may be going south. They may be sitting on a beach. It just whatever goes. If you're the gentleman that was just in my office, he still has he still likes to tinker. He still has his workshop. So that's what you sacrifice when you go to the condo style lifestyle is you're saying, well, I don't need to have that anymore. And for some, it's a lot.
Yeah. And I think a lot of too is for us, especially when we work with these people that are going to go through a massive transition in their life, is I know for me solely as a buyer's agent is to really really have open conversations with them and really get a sense of what they like and what they want versus what they need, but also talking about, is this going to be 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years, and looking at different things. I know when we've gone through, so for example, if you look at the 2-story townhouse, well, most often that's not really workable for people that are getting up in age or have had some physical issues because they don't want the stairs. Well, okay, some don't want apartment living, and it really comes down to a conversation. And I always say to them, you know what, it's free to look. These are on the open market. Let's go look at different options, sit down, reassess, and have a really open conversation. And I often encourage them, talk to your kids, talk to your grown kids, talk to your family, and really hash it out. I mean, a lot of them like the idea of it till they get to looking and have a little panic. And you never want to have someone with any kind of buyer's remorse. So, better off to kind of take your time if it's possible and get that comfort level up to where it needs to be.
Yep, no, it's fair. And I think there's always that aspect too I've seen it quite a bit where people coming in from a rural community maybe or from the farm, and it's their first time living in a condo or looking at living in a condo, and the understanding of kind of the communal lifestyle, because it is a bit communal, as much as you have your own unit, of course you're sharing everything else with others. And I find some people that's a tough concept to wrap their head around.
Yeah.
It's this whole thing of, well, I have to share this games room, let's say, with somebody else, or I have to book a time and I can't just go use it whenever I want, or I have to, make arrangements with the condo board to do this or do that or change something. I think a lot of people really, like you said, Aaron, need to have that open conversation and really understand exactly what they're getting into, because it is a different animal altogether.
Well, like you said, it can be the absolute perfect fit for some and not for others.
100%.
And that's where I said, just go and look and do your due diligence, and that's what we're definitely here to help with.
Yeah, because there's many styles. I mean, when you're coming from the farm, it would be, I moved my parents in 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7 years ago now. That's a big stage,
right?
Because you're going, well, you're used to living on, many acres, wide open views.
Yep.
I mean, the coyotes are howling at night. I mean, and then you're coming into town. That's a big step. They went to single family residential. Then from single family residential, sometimes we'll make the step to semi-detached style condominium living. You'll have attached garage still. You'll have 2 units that are side by side. You're sharing a party wall. So that's communal living, but on a more spacious scale.
Yeah.
Then you go to the apartment style, where you're saying that's truly communal living. You may be on the 7th floor of, with 4 suites or 3 other suites around you being the 4th. There's that style. No right or wrong. It is what it is. And then all of a sudden, that next step after that might be Hemstock, Hearthstone, Pioneer Lodge. I mean, there's a number of other options past that. And then, it's exciting. It's scary. It's fun. I agree with Aaron. Go have a look, get a feel for it. A lot of them will have friends or acquaintances that are in these structures or these buildings already.
Absolutely.
Ask them what the living is like. Ask them, how they feel about the amenities, how they're kept. They don't understand condo fees.
Yeah, no, never. That's always seems like the biggest confusion.
So they'll say, well, there's always those darn condo fees. And you go, yeah, you have to heat the building. You got to put lights in the common area. You got to build a reserve fund in case the roof needs to be changed or the hot water, or let's say the boiler blows. So, if you really took your house bills and said, I've got a heat bill, a light bill, I've got a tax bill, and all this other stuff, and you put in a condo fee against it, when you're in a condo, you typically only pay, let's say a high rise, you'd pay your condo fee, you'd pay your electrical bill, you'd pay your telephone. That's it. Your communal water, garbage, pardon me, heat for the common areas, stuff like that. So, and usually there's centralized heat source.
Yeah.
So people don't understand that is to say, well, it's just a condo fee that's over and above. No, it includes a lot of stuff. So when you guys are out showing or I'm out representing these properties, so let's make sure you understand what you're buying.
Yeah.
And when you're buying it, especially you're buying a percentage amount of a corporation.
Yes.
So you're not buying the walls and the carpet and all that. You're basically enabled to inhabit that suite when you buy that percentage in that corporation. And I often tell clients, and you guys probably the same, think of it that you own from the paint in.
Yep.
Because that's all you get to occupy, and that's what you get to utilize. So if you consider it that way, then your mind can understand to say, okay, if I get from the paint in, I understand what's mine.
And they always told us that in real estate school when I was in Red Deer, paint to paint, roof to floor. That's yours. Everything else is not just yours, it's everybody else's too.
Yep.
And I always thought it was a great way of kind of laying it out there to people. And
You went to real estate school?
I did, I know. Smarter than I look.
It was a tablet back then.
It was a tablet.
Abacus.
Stone a day,
yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting because there's a lot of, no different than anything else in the world. There's a lot of misconception. There's a lot of unknowns. There's a lot of stuff like that. So you say, you know, I guess our original topic was empty nester syndrome, so to speak. So, you know, there's so many options out there now, where years ago there wasn't that many of them. Condo living was not prevalent, and so you're either on the farm, you're living in town, you have a single family home, and if you sold that, you went to the lodge.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, I really love the. I have had one recently. Clients I can think of, we were actually good friends of ours, and they went from, 1,200 square foot by level. They raised their daughters in, and daughters are all gone. The last one's in, third year university, so they're empty nesters. But what they did was sold and actually upsized to their dream home. And the comment that the buyer made to me was, well, I know we're friends, but I probably won't use you again because they're carrying me out of this place feet first.
One and done.
But the excitement on their face is going to, what's going to be now their retirement home, where they're going to, have all this space and yard work, and they're both quite, able and healthy, and raise their grandkids there, and or have their grandkids come and visit, I guess. Just seeing that joy where, on the opposite of going downsize and the fear, the excitement of going upsizing and knowing you've got much more space to fill up.
And let's face it, let's hit that head on, because everyone says the misconception is this: well, if I'm going to retire, I have to go smaller. You don't have to do anything.
Yeah, no.
You can go back. I had an empty nest couple one time, and they bought a 3,000 square foot 2-story from me with triple car garage. And I was like, holy Dinah! But it's the garage he wanted, the location they wanted, and same thing. Like, this is the space we want. Just because your kids are gone doesn't mean you want to hack all the space out of your life. Because my wife and I downsized, we have a place at the lake. And if we do, and that's currently on the market, so if something happens there, we might look for space elsewhere. We might get something in Calgary.
That was a little plug right there. Do you want to just say the MLS number too?
It's dirt cheap. You should buy it today.
It's a great buy, excellent value.
But at the end of the day, is that's the fun part. So people shouldn't look at it as downsizing. It's a lifestyle change. It's a transition. You say, what do you want now? Do you want to sell the bigger house, and do you want a place at the lake? Do you want to upsize? Do you now the kids are gone? Let's face it, guys. It's tough to raise kids.
Heck yes.
It's tough. It's expensive. It's probably the biggest thing we'll ever do in our lives, and very, very exciting.
It's the most expensive.
But it's
By far.
There's some fiscal responsibility, we'll say, that goes along with it. And once they're gone on their own, hopefully, then you say, okay, maybe now you'll have some disposable income. Saying, hey, now what do we want to do when we grow up?
Yeah.
It can be a challenging time of life, because of course you pour the time and energy into the kids. But now, now you both can say, hey, what do we want to do? Because usually it's around the kids. Yeah, exactly. What do we like to do? What do you like to do? What do I like to do? And that's the challenge and the fun all in one.
Yeah.
I think it freaks some people out.
Oh, for sure.
But as much as it freaks them out, it should excite them, where you're saying, now what? Like, we would have never in a million years, when my wife and I are 25 years this fall, have considered saying we'd have a secondary property maybe in Calgary. Now, it doesn't matter if I own it or rent, it doesn't matter. That wouldn't even on the radar for the last 24 years, until all of a sudden my daughter's moving down there this summer, my son's already there, and my daughter may go to UFC. Well, stuff happens, things change. And in this world, they change faster and faster all the time. So there's no right or wrong, and your kids are going to university, Lakeland, so they're going to stay put. But if they were in Edmonton or Saskatoon or Calgary or Toronto or wherever, suddenly your time and attention gets drawn elsewhere. That's the fun and excitement of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
When yours are how old again?
16, 14. So the one's going to be heading down that path in a couple of years, and then some decisions have to get made as to where and when and how that looks and everything else. But bit of time yet, thankfully. So
yeah, you have a secondary property at Little Fishing.
Yeah, I do.
And Aaron's got a yard so big that he doesn't need a
three
secondary
houses in
property,
there.
because he can put a guest house in the back.
But I did the secondary property when our daughter made the decision to stay in Lloydminster and complete her degree here. We were going to buy a secondary place. Same thing. If she went into Edmonton or Calgary, we were going to buy a place there, and she'd stay there and with a rental, that kind of thing. And when she decided to stay, we knew she was at the age where she didn't need to be with us, but still needed a little bit of supervision and kind of learn the ropes on her own. So we bought a property that she lives in, and it's been good for us. And in a couple of years when she's done, now we can transition the other one over there or move it. And again, we'll get to that point where they're both done and gone, and we've kind of helped set them up. And now, I know my wife and I will look at each other and say, okay, what do you want to do?
Yeah.
What do you want to do for us? Because, we take our time for ourselves, of course, but of course you want to make sure your kids are taken care of and help them along the way as best you can.
Yep, makes sense.
But good on you, because I mean, it's when you go to a larger center and all of a sudden the furnace conks out, and my children haven't, let's say maintained a property like a single family residence. They've either lived in an apartment or a condo. So, I mean, there's those life lessons that you're going to teach them and learn, and you're there to look over their shoulder. But like my daughter was in Calgary this weekend and she had car trouble. Well, it's usually, okay, Dad, you're here to take care of it. Well, she had to limp it to the garage and get it fixed, and it was stressful, but she got through it. I'm like, hey, kiddo, here's life lesson 10,204.
Yeah.
When the car breaks down, let's get it fixed. Yeah. It was a minor thing, but you're not there just to look over their shoulder. Yeah. So for her to be able to tackle that single family residential, and then, okay, well, there's some maintenance. You got to push the lawnmower. You got to make sure that the bills are paid. They're all capable. We've just bubble wrapped them a bit too much some days. So
makes sense.
Yeah.
And it's funny you said that, because some of that leads into, you talk about, whether you rent in Calgary or own in Calgary. Well, funny enough, one of the guests I'm having on today does rentals. He's at a Red Deer, of course, but a former colleague of mine, Nolin Maurier. Nolin was with C21 Advantage down there for years. Started his own brokerage, I don't even know, probably 10 years ago now. Has done well, but he's going to give us some of that kind of perspective, but from the property management side of things. He has lots of people he works with that are I should say works with on the property management end that are, like you said, putting their kids in a rental or maybe buying a rental for themselves, and it's neat to hear that perspective sometimes too. So,
well, I think that's a big thing, Ryan. Is if a lot of people don't realize what the value that a licensed property manager can bring to the table, especially if you're I'll call it an absentee owner.
Absolutely.
If you own it in another community, it's not as worrisome for me, obviously, having the place 20 blocks away here in Lloydminster, but we'd looked into that when we're looking at a property in Edmonton. Is okay, well, let's start checking out the property management firms. My friend that's a realtor up there talked to them about that. Their brokerage didn't do it, but it's something that's important. Someone there to collect the rents and fix things and stay in touch with you, because that's kind of not the tenant's responsibility. They're going to tell you what's wrong. They're going to report to somebody, but some boots on the ground, I think, is probably the best way to look at it.
And Noel makes a good point. You'll hear in the chat, he makes a good point about that, and I would agree that it's one of those really undervalued, underappreciated industries. He kind of uses a hockey analogy of they're the guys that go in the corner and dig the puck out sometimes, and I thought it's a good way of putting it. We always think of the realtors, the guys that tee it up and make the beautiful one-timer and maybe get the glory or get the, hey, I sold the house type thing, but they're definitely the diggers and the guys that score the ugly goals. So it's nice to talk to them too. And
we've all did CMAs, comparative market analysis on houses that were not professionally managed.
Yes.
So the tenants, they kind of had free reign. They're out-of-town owners. And when we show up, it's like, holy.
Yeah, you can tell.
Yeah, it's like, holy.
Yeah.
So, that'll be an interesting listen, because you're right. Some of the unsung heroes in our industry,
Absolutely.
There's no doubt about that.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Well, that's perfect, guys. Ryan will let you get to your chat with Nolin, and look forward to some upcoming episodes. We've got a pile of guests lined up over the next month, so more entertaining facts and stories and conversations about real estate with the C21 Drive Time podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm here today for another story with my good friend Nolin Maurier. Nolin's a realtor and property manager in Red Deer. He's the broker owner of Realty Experts Group. And without further ado, how are you, Nolin?
Great.
Good. So Nolin and I, to kind of give you a bit of history, we worked together at C21 Advantage several years ago now. I don't want to say how many because I'm dating myself. A lot of years ago. But I wanted to chat with Nolin today. And he was very gracious to give us some time to kind of talk about property management. It's an angle we haven't talked about here on the podcast before. And I know that you do some of that. And how about you just let us know kind of who you are, how many years in the industry, and kind of how property management came about for you, and what you got to do to be a property manager.
Well, I've been licensed since 1997. So if you want to talk about dating myself, that would be one area of doing so. I guess in 5 years from now, that would make it 30 years. So
wow,
half my life pretty well in real estate, eat, breathe, and sleep it. And I wasn't into property management till probably about 2015. So not like super long, but I did own a number of my own properties and I did manage them, but it is a way different game managing your own properties than it is managing other people's properties.
Right.
So essentially, I had another associate that wanted to do property management. I wasn't really too keen on it because I do know the pitfalls of that type of business, but he said he would take those pitfalls, and so off we went. I had lots of ups and downs on that, the costs and everything like that, because property management is a volume-based business. It's very difficult to make things work on low numbers coming through. So it basically started for me when I had a client in Red Deer when houses just weren't really selling. And it wasn't that they weren't selling, they just weren't selling for the prices everybody wanted to.
Right.
The typical scenario was everybody was buying houses for 500 grand. And now we go in there and market it and it's 425 or 450. So people couldn't stomach those kind of costs. They had to move. And therefore we ended up with a lot of what we call accidental landlords. So the intent was never to be a rental property, but they turned into a rental property. And so one of the first times I said the client wouldn't do it, and I didn't want to lose, quotation marks, control of this particular client. And so I ended up managing the property and figuring it out, found a tenant. And after that, it just kept snowballing. Every time someone couldn't sell their house, I just said, well, let's just rent it out or let's manage it or something like that. And they bid on that pretty quick. So
nice. So what would you say, Nolin, is kind of the primary role of a property manager then? Is it, I know there's obviously, and I'm sure people listening know, obviously there's the part of gathering and attracting it. But aside from that, what would you say is kind of the main roles?
Well, yeah, it is kind of an A to Z, much like a realtor is, where people hire you to do pretty well everything. The biggest thing for me, what I've realized over time, is being able to manage expectations of the owner, because there's this high level of expectations, much like being a realtor, that you're going to swoop in, sell the house for maximum dollar with the least amount of problems. And as soon as there's a problem, then it goes on to the person. So with management over time, I've realized that there's so many different personalities in the actual ownership. So out of 100 properties, if you had 100 owners, you're going to have 100 different personalities. Some are, hey, I've got the money to pay for this. Accidental landlords do not have that extra money. So you say,
right.
The gate needs to be fixed. And now they're upset with me.
Right.
And, and so that's been the most difficult thing, to be honest with you. And that's that gap that you have between the owner and the manager, and therefore the tenant. The tenant and the owner gap is extremely large. So the owner doesn't want to pay anything to fix or to renovate, and the tenant wants everything handed to them,
Right, at no cost.
And so the tenant doesn't understand necessarily that the owner doesn't have any money either. Once you pay your mortgage, your taxes, your this, your that, there's nothing really left out at the end of the game. So, I've got lots of clients that are doctors and stuff like that. So if something goes wrong, it's pocket change for them to fix. And other people that are clinging on to dear life with the property, they're paying $500, $600 extra a month. Things are killing them. And I've got multiple stories of that kind of scenario. But overall, the people just want us to, find a good tenant. And the long story short is a tenant that will take care of the place and pay rent. Those two components. That's why I always say, wrapped up in a whole big, huge contract. If the tenant just takes care of the place and pays their rent, everybody's happy.
That makes sense.
Yep.
Okay. So what would you say if you're,
got a property and you have become an accidental landlord, or maybe you've got a rental property with the intention of having it as an investment, what should a person look for a property manager?
Well, they gotta have some guts for sure. So I look at property management. If you were to look at the analogy of hockey, property management is the guy that goes into the corner and digs out the puck. Right. And he's the one that takes the hits on the boards and has to stick up for Connor McGregor or Connor McDavid. And he has to, that kind of stuff, take a few black eyes for the team, but gets paid pretty good. But he's not getting all the goals in the net or anything like that. It's not the fancy, clean scenarios of the business, right? Whereas real estate sales in some capacity is the guy that puts the puck in the net. He gets paid pretty good money for a one-time shot, and that's kind of how it goes. So, if people are looking for a property manager, that's one thing, but quality and systems too as well. Like, I think the thing that makes me a really great property manager, despite all the challenges that happen with management, because trust me, as good as I think I am, or with communication and all those kinds of skills that I have, there's a lot of breakdown because of things that are really out of my control. I can't control, like this summer has been really bad for water. So we've had an extensive amount of properties with foundational problems, water going into the basement. Some people have insurance, some don't. These all of a sudden become $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 bills right out of the air, just like that. And it doesn't do anything because everything was functioning properly before. So I think communication is very important in the quality. And so I bring this sales training that I've had since 1997 as a realtor into this portfolio, and I'm able to, calm the situation down. Like, sometimes people are out of their mind irate, mostly tenants. Sometimes owners too, right? Like, a guy doesn't pay his utility bill, the owner phones and he's out of his mind. Why aren't they paying their utilities? And so it's a lot of like nonsense items, but when I look at it from the perspective of whoever it is, a tenant or an owner, they are very important issues in their own little world. Right. But from the large scale of things, they're not. So, I think you have to look at a track record and stuff like that. But, I think it's very difficult to create a really solid reputation as a property manager. I think we just really get crapped on a lot, as opposed to a realtor can have a really great reputation. So it takes one or two tenants to make some stupid comment about something, and they haven't paid their rent for 2 months, and we didn't fix the gate for them. Right. And
the public only sees the comments they post. They don't see the other side of the issue. Yeah.
Correct. And so I've had that before. I've had tenants make those comments, and I've emailed them behind the scenes. I said, well, that's half the truth. So if you want me to tell the whole truth about you being evicted because you didn't pay your rent and then you left it like shit, then, let's talk about that. And so the comments sometimes get withdrawn, but I've had to grow a stronger skin, to be honest with you, because I'm a very heartfelt person. I still try to bring that into the business, dealing with it. But yeah, we get stomped on quite a bit, even when we're trying to care for people.
Right. And, from the realtor standpoint, it's our interaction with you guys is always an interesting dynamic too, because as wearing the realtor hat, lots of times there's a tenant in the property. So you might have to, you guys are often that intermediary too between us and the tenant. Sometimes we're trying to get a hold of you to find out what's the situation with, is there a lease? Is there not? When can this person move out? When can the new buyer take occupancy? Are they willing to assume the tenant? Sometimes they'll take over the current situation. It's a complicated mess, and you guys have a really, really important role. And I do think it's underrated. I think it's highly underrated. It's super important.
and people don't put enough weight or enough importance onto it. So my hat's off to you for heading down that path and being successful with it. You've done great. You've got a pile of doors, and you've done well on the investment as well. So kudos to you.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, we were kind of leading into it. Something I ask everybody I talk to, and I'd kind of hinted to you that this was coming. And I get asked all the time, I'm sure you do too, and I'm sure you're gonna have something good because you're gonna see it from the property management angle. So I'm expecting this to be pretty wild. What's the craziest, weirdest, wildest thing you've ever seen, experienced in your time as a realtor or property manager?
Well, I don't know if I mean, I know you told me you've got some unique stories in there. So it's, it's a pretty crazy stuff that, we've gone through. But, I remember I've got a couple, because I was trying to think of that, and it's like, what is, I think sometimes for me and yourself as well, you've been through it. We've gone through so many houses.
Yep.
And so when you go through a person's house as a realtor, property manager, or any of that, to some degree you take for granted, you're really peering into who they are, as a reflection of who they are.
Right.
So we've had, we've all had clients that are just absolutely perfect. Their house is immaculate. It's been well maintained. It is just, that if you get that listing and it's priced pretty good, it's a done deal. It's money in the bank, so to speak. And then you can go all the way down to the very bottom of the spectrum, mostly in management, but as realtors, we also have to sell these kinds of dirt holes too as well. And
yes.
So you peer in to the souls of these people that operate at such a low level sometimes of life that, from my perspective, it's very difficult. And it's probably taken me, I still struggle with it. It's probably taken me 5 to 7 years to understand how some people can live.
Right.
They're okay with, for example, cat feces on the floor. Ugh. And, you're looking through this place and they're going, "Oh, excuse the mess." And I go, "Well, you could have used a mop to clean up the cat shit."
Yeah.
Just, the ones where you for sure don't want to take your shoes off, kind of scenarios, right? Yeah. So I remember when I first started real estate, and I was pretty green at the time, and this guy said he wanted to sell his house. I went out it was out in Black Falls, just outside of Red Deer at the time, and I rang the doorbell. Couldn't, he didn't come to the door. I went to the back. He came to the back, and I, yelled out hello, and he said, "Oh, I'm just downstairs." And I was like, "What is that stink?" And he was down there literally because the sewer had backed up into this property, and he was literally, I'm not kidding, he had rubber boots on there. There was 2 feet or so of or 1.5 feet, because it didn't go past his rubber boots, but it was all sewer backup in this property.
Yuck.
And I didn't even know how to really handle it, because today I'd be nothing. I'd probably go down there with my rubber boots now myself and go, "Hey, what's going on?" But that was pretty disgusting, and it kind of, let me know what is possible. I think it's really unique to be able to go into these properties, as much as it makes me cringe to go into the dirt holes. Which a lot of the time, especially during the management, I've had to do. There's something weirdly in I don't know what the word is, unique or interesting about it.
Right.
To just go, "Wow, I can't believe this person lived like this."
It's incredible sometimes, isn't it?
I find I would almost rather sleep in the streets in some of these places that are presented to us. And so, we've heard every excuse under the book. Our wallets have been thrown into the water. They lost their wallet. The classic is their bank their bank account gets frozen.
Right.
So I find that very interesting that their bank account that has no money in it is the one that gets frozen all the time.
Right.
You know, they can't pay the rent, but their bank account has been frozen because that's where the thieves want to go, is the accounts that have no money. So sometimes I question myself and say, what the hell did I get myself into here?
Why am I doing this job?
You know, I mean, I remember back in the day, I still do lots of sales and stuff like that too, as well. I like the blend. I really do like the blend. I would lie to say that I hate the really dirty parts of this business, but if it was easy, there would be no property manager for one. And, if it was easy, everybody else would do it. And so, one thing that I've learned in my life is you got to do what's hard in life, and then life will become easy. And if you do in life what's easy, life will become hard. And so I've always taken on challenges, and I've always looked at this as a way to evolve and offer different types of services. And this is just kind of where it's at. One thing that I know for sure is that at any given moment, I could throw it all away if I wanted to.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Nolin. I appreciate your time today. And that was some awesome insight. And I think you gave us a real good grasp on, not only property management, what's involved, and, what some of your experiences and adventures have been. So thank you so much for that. Appreciate your time today, as always, and all the best. And we'll talk to you soon.
You bet, man. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the C21 Drive Time podcast. Please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and we'll see you next week.